Lesson 9.8, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be graphing quadratic inequalities. Now, we've already graphed quadratic equations. Remember when we did our x equals negative b over 2a and found our vertex, then made our table and plugged it in our calculator? And when we graphed it, it looked like a parabola that looked like this or like this. We are doing the exact same thing in this lesson. The only thing that's going to be different is this time, instead of an equation which has an equal sign, we're going to have a greater than or a less than sign. So it's going to mean something a little bit different when I graph. Other than that, graphing it, the actual finding the vertex, plugging it in our chart, is going to be the exact same as what you've already done. But before we get into that, first of all, they want us to check whether the ordered pair is a solution. So what makes this an inequality is the fact that right here we have a greater than or equal to sign, a less than sign, a greater than sign, okay? Anytime you have those, we call the problems inequalities because they're not equations. They don't have equals. So if they want us to plug in the ordered pair to find out if it's a solution, my ordered pair is 1, 0. Which one of these numbers is x? Which one is y?
X is 1, y is 0.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to take and I'm going to go 0 is equal to 2 times 1 squared minus 1. So all I did was everywhere I saw a y, I replaced it with a 0. And everywhere I saw an x, I replaced it with a 1. So we're just going to use our calculators to find out if 0 is really going to be greater than this side over here. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 2, then parentheses 1, parentheses squared, minus 1. And when I do that, I get 1. So 0 is greater than or equal to 1. Is this ordered pair a solution? No, because 0 is not greater than 1. So we're just going to write no and box that in. So let's do the same thing, but for the next one. So which one of these numbers is x? Which one is y?
2.
2 is x, 1 is y. So we're going to have 1 is less than 2 squared plus 9 times 2. Again, we're only going to plug this side into our calculator. So we have 1 is less than. In my calculator, I'm going to do 2 squared plus 9 times 2. What do you get? 22. Is 1 less than 22? Yes. So this is a solution. So let's do the last one. We're going to do negative 3 is greater than 4 times 1 squared minus 7 times 1. So in my calculator, again, I'm only plugging in this side. So I'm going to do 4 parentheses 1 squared minus 7 parentheses 1. And it equals negative 3. Is negative 3 greater than negative 3? No. If it had the little equal to sign underneath it, we would be okay. But because there's not, it is no. It is not a solution. Okay? So this is how we just check to see if the ordered pair is a solution to the quadratic inequality. So what I'm going to show you now are the steps to graphing a quadratic inequality. If you look, the first 3 steps are identical to the first 3 steps of graphing a quadratic equation. Step number 1 is I have to find the vertex. X equals negative b over 2a. Once I find that vertex, I can do 2 numbers smaller and 2 numbers larger. So I make my table, and then I'm going to use my calculator, the f of x mode, the table mode, to plug that in to find out what y is. Then I'm going to plot the points. Now, this is where it gets different. Because I don't have an equal sign. I have a greater than or less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to sign. If it has a greater than or less than sign, I use a dotted line to connect the dots. So my parabola would look like this. See how that's dotted? Because it's greater than or less than. So it's not exactly equal to. So I don't want to do a solid line. Then, if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, I am going to use a solid line because it can be equal to that number. Okay, so here's what I like to say. If there's a solid line underneath the sign, use a solid line. Then we're going to have to shade. Now, I will tell you exactly how to shade whenever we get to the graphs because it's much easier to explain whenever you see it. But let me just ask you this question first. If I were to say the word greater, would you think up or down? Up. If I were to say the word less than, would you think up or down? Down. Okay, that's good. All right, so I'm going to let you guys write this down, and then we're going to go ahead and start to graph. Okay, so let's begin graphing. So let's look at the first equation. Or I'm sorry, not equation, inequality. Y is less than x squared plus 2x plus 2. Now I'm going to switch to graph paper. And what I want to do is I want to label A, B, and C, just like I used to do whenever I graph. So what is A in this equation? 1. Remember, because it's always the number in front of x squared. What is B? 2. And what's C? 2. Okay? So step number 1 is find the vertex, which means x equals negative b over 2a. So we're going to do negative 2 over 2 times 1. Negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. Remember doing that? Now we're going to do our x and y chart. So we are going to put what in the middle? Negative 1. Very good. Do 2 numbers smaller and 2 numbers larger than negative 1. What's 2 numbers smaller than negative 1? Negative 2, negative 3. What are 2 numbers larger? 0 and 1. So this is where I can use my calculator. So I'm going to take, in my calculator, I'm going to make sure it's the correct mode, so the table mode. And it says f of x equals. You say, wait a second, I thought it was a greater than or less than sign. It is, but we're not going to worry about that because our numbers are still going to be the same no matter if it's greater than or less than. The only thing that the greater than or less than sign changes is the dotted line or solid line and where we shade. So I'm going to do alpha x squared plus 2 alpha x plus 2. Then press equals. Remember, I skip over g of x, so we press equals again. What's my start value? Negative 3. And what's my end value? 1. My step is always 1. So then what are our values? 5, 2, 1, 2, 5. So now I've got a graph. So let's set up our graph. Now that our graph is set up, we're going to start plotting our points. So we're going to go first to negative 3 and up to 5. Then we're going to go to negative 2, up to negative 1, 1, 0, 2, 1, 5, and there are our points. Now, we've got to decide, before I can draw my line through, does it need to be a dotted line or a solid line? So I look at my sign. It's a less than sign. Is there an or equal to sign underneath it? No. So I know it's going to be a dotted line. So what you can do, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take this dotted line. Now, this is where I need everybody's close attention. We've got a shade. So this is what I have to do, because we're either going to shade inside of the parabola. When I mean inside, it looks like this, or outside of the parabola, which looks like this. And I've got to determine which one is correct, because one way is right and the other is not. So this is what you do, is you look at your inequality. So it's either going to be greater than or less than. What is the sign that I have? Less than. Remember when I asked you that question, when you think of less than, which way do you think, up or down? Down. So in order for us to get to shade inside, because inside means would be the same, okay? The parabola has to be pointing down. Is our parabola pointing down? No, it's doing the opposite. So when it's the opposite, I shade outside of the parabola. So I'm going to shade everything here in the graph on the outside. Okay, so we're going to look at our sign, and if the parabola points the same way as the sign, so if it's less than and it points down, we shade inside. So same inside, opposite outside. So less than and up, those are opposite, right? See, when I'm talking about up, I'm talking about, see how my arrows face up here? That's what I'm talking about. So when it's opposite, less than up, we shade outside. Or if I have a greater than sign and my parabola faces down, that's also opposite. Or if I have a greater than and my parabola faces up, that's the same, so we go inside. Okay? So don't worry if that's confusing to you. We'll do more, and the more you practice, the better you'll get. Okay, so this is how we graph parabolas. So let's do the next one. So I'm going to go back to my page, and we just graphed this first inequality. So now we're going to do the second. And we've got y is greater than or equal to negative x squared minus 2x plus 3. So first of all, before I do anything, I'm going to actually rewrite mine so it's up here at the top. And if you notice, I just went ahead and wrote a 1 in front of the x squared, the negative x squared, so I know it's there. What is a in this equation? Negative 1. What is b?
-2.
What is c? 3. So what would I do first?
Well, x equals
Negative b over 2a. Very good. What if b is already negative? What does it make it? Positive 2 over 2 times negative 1. 2 over negative 2, which is negative 1. So actually, our chart is going to use the same start and end. It's not going to be the same numbers.
Why?
Because it's not the same equation.
Wait, wasn't the other one a positive one?
No.
Negative. So we have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, 0, and 1. So this is where I go to my calculator, and I'm going to type in negative 1 alpha x squared minus 2 alpha x plus 3. Press equals. I'm going to press equals again. My start value is negative 3. My end value is 1. My step is always 1. And so the numbers that I'm going to get are 0, 3, 4, 3, 0. Okay, so now that I've got my graph made, I'm going to plot my points. The first point that I'm going to plot is negative 3, 0. So it's going to be negative 3, stay at 0. Then negative 2, positive 3. So I go over to negative 2, but up to 3. Negative 1, positive 4. Then 0, 3. And 1, 0. So before I draw my line, I've got to look at my sign. what type of inequality sign do I have?
Greater than.
Greater than or equal to. So remember what I said about, oh, if your inequality has the solid line underneath it, draw a solid line. So we're going to use a solid line this time, not a dotted. And now I've got to decide on the shading. So let's look. What sign do I have? Greater than or less than? Greater than. So greater. And which way does my parabola face? Up or down?
Down.
Down. So greater and down. Are those opposite or are they the same?
Opposite.
Opposite. So we're going to shade outside of the parabola. So I'm going to take everything on the outside of the parabola and I'm going to shade it just like that. Okay?
Well, I got it right.
Okay, so now with this problem, I want you guys to try this one on your own. So on this problem, it should actually say 2x squared instead of 2x. So that'll help. All right, John, tell me, what did you do first?
Me?
Yes.
I found A, B, and C.
Okay, so you found A, B, and C. So let me change to my graph paper. So we have y is greater than or equal to 2x squared minus 4x plus 2. And John, what was A?
A was 2,
What was B?
-4.
Hold on.
Teachers, please pardon the interruption. Please, students, please remember that dress down.
So 2x squared, I'm sorry, the recording cut off here. So minus 4x plus 2. So you said that A is 2, B is -4, and C is 2. So what did you do after that?
I did x equals -b over 2a.
Okay, which means 4 over,
2 times 2.
Which is 1.
Okay, 4 over 4, which is 1.
Wait, so it's not -1?
It would be positive 1 because the B is already negative. So when I make my chart,
1 is in the middle.
so 1's in the middle. Then we have 0, -1, 2, and 3. And we plug this in our calculator. When you plug it in your calculator, you plug everything in, what were the values that you got for y?
8203. That's what I did.
Very good. 82028. So then we're going to graph. So the first point that I'm going to place, I'm going to go to -1 and +8. Then 0, 2. Then 1, 0. 2, 2. And 3, 8. What type of line do I have? A dotted or a solid?
Solid.
Solid. Very good, because
So
it's
mine.
greater than or equal to. Now, what type of sign do I have?
Greater.
Greater than. So I'm going to put greater. And which way does my graph face? Up or down? Up. So are those the same or are they opposite?
Same.
Same. So we are going to shade this time inside.
Hey, stop.
Okay? So if they're the same, we shade inside. If they're opposite, we shade outside. What I mean by that, okay, let me write this down. I'll write this down for you and you can write this down. So what I mean by the same. So greater and up, less than, and down. Those are the same. So we shade inside. So anytime you have that combo, you're going to shade inside. But then if you have greater and down, and a less than and up, those are opposite, so we shade outside. Okay? And that's how we do 9.8 graphing inequalities. Quadratic inequalities.